Now, over the last year, we have spent quite a little bit of time, before things were deleted, of course, discussing the ramifications of the civilization project, not only those ecological, but those psychological as well. And that's important because we take for granted that human nature is homogeneous. I disagree. I think that human nature has multiple expressions that will be emergent depending greatly on the environment or habitat which any given human being happens to inhabit. That there are certainly circumstances which will make certain kinds of character traits that might be latent in one set of circumstances really quite overt in other circumstances. We did discuss quite a little bit the ramifications of an individual who might live in a hunter-gatherer nomad environment as opposed to somebody who lives in the throes of civilization, especially late-stage industrial civilization. That's a fascinating conversation. One of the more important, I think, ramifications that we don't often immediately recognize is the role of mentorship. Mentorship being something that you find as a very, very common, even ubiquitous characteristic of hunter-gatherer bands, but it is a rare characteristic in civilization. In fact, in civilization, you very often find not mentors, but a professional priesthood class or gurus whose job it is and who are compensated for, ostensibly at least, communicating the truths of the community to its up-and-coming members. I think mentorship is a radically more effective, more honest, and authentic way of going about it. The professional priests and the gurus often are captivated by greed, and their grift motivations are all too conspicuous. But we should examine a little bit of the difference in these roles and why it's important. So let's say, for example, that you are a member of a community of several hundred people, maybe a fishing community similar to what has existed on my coast here for the last couple tens of thousands of years, sustainably. Fishing culture, relatively complicated and sophisticated artistry, a rich heritage there, in fact, and surprising levels of competency and skill in watercraft. And let's say that you are a budding young fellow and you desire to take up the trade of canoe building, for example. How is it that you would go about that? Well, quite transparently, in fact, you would seek out the individual who conspicuously and obviously was the best canoe builder in your community. They would be an individual that you would know personally. They were a real human being that had other aspects to their life other than simply canoe building that you would be aware of as well. You would know a lot about their character and how their character commingles itself with its craft. There would be an innately human relationship there, and you would hope that this particular mentor would see the potentiality in you, that they would be willing to take you under their wing, so to speak, as a bit of an apprentice. Now, of course, understanding that there's a two-way street there, right? You are seeking out the mentor because you know that they are a capable person of good character They are a responsible human being. That's why you're seeking them out. And in fact, if you are going to expect that they are going to take on the project of mentoring you, that you too have to present yourself as a responsible human being, willing to honor and take on with due seriousness the information that they are going to pass on to you. There's a significant interpersonal commitment in mentorship that we should really contemplate, because it contrasts so heavily with the role of the priest or the guru, which we would examine next. Now, if we compare and contrast this dynamic of the mentor in the traditional community to the modern day guru, especially a self-help guru or any of these other experts that we meet so commonly on the internet, I mean, it's quite conspicuous from the start that most of these individuals are people that we know almost nothing about. In fact, quite typically, their own character and their own personal life is something we know nothing about. In fact, often they're quite cagey about keeping those aspects of their life silent. And because they keep those aspects of their life silent, we don't have a means by which to judge their fundamental humanity or their character. Their expertise and status then comes from credentials or other kinds of trappings of status that they may have found or purchased for themselves within civilizational hierarchical authority. They have a tendency to remind you quite often that they're an expert in what they're talking about. That is something you often need to take on faith. The relationship obviously is not one of being interpersonal. It is one of they being the individual with the knowledge and you are the recipient. And other than there being often a fee of some sort involved in the service that they provide for you, there is no agreement, no appreciation for mutual responsibility in the teaching relationship. They won't care whether or not you follow through on the message that you're given. And they often can provide no warranty that the knowledge that they are providing is actually legitimate either. Buyer beware. Remember, they are speaking from authority, not experience. In the case of the mentor, you understand that their authority comes from experience. In this case, their authority comes from credentials, and you have no idea whatsoever whether or not the information they're providing you has been of any utility whatsoever in their own life, nor whether they've been successful following their own tenets. They might have a magical 10 steps for life, but you have absolutely no idea whether or not they've ever implemented any of those in their own life, and if they have, whether or not they've at all been successful with it. And of course, this isn't to say at all that the guru doesn't necessarily have, as people say, good things to say. In fact, that's a pretty natural prerequisite for being a guru, is to have a whole host, a whole catalog of platitudes and good things to say. You won't get much guruing done if you've got bad things to say or challenging things to say or difficult things to say. As there is no relationship between you and the guru, as there might be between you and the canoe builder, there's no commitment on either part or either party to retain the relationship if anything at all gets difficult. So if anything, especially as they are providing a service for you and a product, expect from the guru a lot of good things to say, but only those that are kind of candy-coated and are controversial only in the sense that they might titillate you a little bit, but not challenge. But the commercial and kind of banal characteristics of the truths that gurus offer is the least of the concerns. What the guru really does, and what the core of the guru's product really is more dangerous, which is the ability of the individual to evade taking responsibility for their own life while feeling comfortable in their current circumstances, listening to the guru in an environment that demands no personal responsibility whatsoever, yet feeling that in some way or another they are doing something to better themselves. Ultimately, the guru doesn't care whether or not you have taken on their 10 steps for life or not. They care that you've bought the book, but they don't care beyond that. There is, in fact, a certain kind of cynicism within the guru's whole operation. Gurus at some level are aware that the individuals who are their audience are individuals who are not interested in personal responsibility and not interested in making meaningful changes in their lives. Otherwise, they wouldn't be seeking a guru. They'd either be living lives of self-actualization, or they would be enmeshing themselves in humane relationships with other individuals who have real observable character, real observable qualities, mentors, in fact, engaging in relationships with reciprocal responsibility. Well, that is how human progress on the individual level takes form. Again, we can compare and contrast the dynamic of the guru to the mentor. Imagine, again, being that young guy in a fishing village, seeking out the mentor. This mentor agrees to give you instruction and guidance in exchange for this relationship, one that takes the knowledge that they're going to give you seriously. Imagine if you just don't. How long do you think the mentor relationship would continue to persist? The answer is not at all. There's a value that is inherent with this information. The mentor guards this. They don't give it away for nothing. There's unlikely to be a fee involved. They're not the kind of individual that wants to profit by it, but they're not going to cast these pearls before swine. And if they're going to invest in the effort of making this information available to others, they want to make certain that those individuals who are interested are truly interested and responsible people capable of making some use of it. Anyway, I thought that this might be interesting to contemplate. If we are sincere in our interest in emancipating ourselves from the oppressive tendencies of our civilization, to live unfettered lives, seeking purposeful existence, it's essential that when we seek guidance, we seek it from individuals where we have a relationship that demands personal responsibility on both sides, and that we be very careful of messages that may sound attractive, but in fact serve no purpose other than keeping us complacent and satisfied, comfortable enough in our servitude, because those messages ultimately serve to further enslave us rather than liberate us. Something to consider. Cheers.